happened to the parody movie? What was once a consistent staple in theaters has been forsaken to roam the straight-to-streaming wastelands until the studio gods deem its watch complete. We went from bangers like The Naked Gun to threadbare pop cultural mashups that leave you staring at Tubi like, huh, the Starving Games. This is supposed to be a comedy, and I'm the one here feeling like a joke. While the genre went out with a whimper, it was so much more than the movies that defined it in its twilight. In my opinion, the genre really kicked off in the 70s with two essential films, Blazing Saddles and Airplane. I know Airplane's 1980, but just rock with me. If you listen to like any old head ever, there has never and will never be a movie as edgy as Blazing Saddles. You couldn't make Blazing Saddles today, bro. Gen Z couldn't handle it. It's where the woke meets the wall. It's like hardcore comedy, dude. Like, you just couldn't make it. You just couldn't make it. And then you watch Blazing Saddles, and a lot of the gags are like this. Its reputation as the still transgressive icon is odd to me because, well, yes, there are some casual slurs and raunchier moments, aka just a standard day in the group chat. Overall, it's just a really silly movie, less mankind and more dude love. It's just basically a f***ing Looney Tune. Like, yeah, it has the bones of a story, but its goal is chasing the gag, no matter the cost. The plot has Hedley Lamarr, a territorial attorney general, employing a scheme to take control of the town of Ridge Rock after learning a railroad will be built through it. He suggests to the town's ineffectual mayor that they should install a new black sheriff, hoping that it would offend the townspeople so much and cause so much chaos that it will allow him to consolidate power. It completely takes the piss out of the Western and introduces a lot of tropes that would become common in the parody genre, from anachronistic references to completely destroying the fourth wall. This movie is jam-packed with so many great, silly gags, like Bart holding himself hostage when the town rejects him as sheriff.
Hold it. The next man makes a move, the nigger gets it.
Hold it, man. He's not bluffing.
Or even Gene Wilder's incredible, pitch-perfect delivery of,
"What's your name?"
Well, my name is Jim, but most people call me Jim.
The idea you couldn't make Blazing Saddles today is kinda silly because there have been far more transgressive works made in the 50 years since its release. Heck, I watched Scott Tenorman eat his parents when I was 10. I watched a group of high school girls murder a football team for comedy just last year. I think you could easily make Blazing Saddles today, like, no problem. Mel Brooks was holding down the parody through the 70s. He'd follow up Blazing Saddles with Young Frankenstein, another classic, Silent Movie, and High Anxiety, each film a parody of classic eras of filmmaking. While Brooks would continue cooking up bangers in the 80s with History of the World Part 1 and Spaceballs, the trio of David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrams, aka ZAZ, or Zaz as I'm gonna say in the video, would make a splash into the scene in 1980 with Airplane, a gag-a-minute parody of disaster movies that were becoming commonplace in Hollywood at the time. Airplane is still a banger to this day. It is honestly one of those scripts that I just stand in awe of because they pack so many gags and so many different types of gags, from just wordplay, sight gags, non sequiturs. Like, it's so much comedy, so many different types of comedy, while also effectively lampooning a whole genre. Like, if you want to study comedy, Airplane's gotta be on your list. After Airplane, Zaz would make Police Squad, a series that served as a parody of old cop shows from the 50s and 60s. The show was almost too accurate in its parody, as visually it looked like every other cop show. It wasn't until you stopped and paid attention that you realized it was completely making fun of the genre.
Do you know what it's like to be married to a wonderful man for 14 years?
No, I can't say that I do. I did live with a guy once, though, but that was just for a couple of years. Oh. Usual slurs, rumors, innuendos people didn't understand.
Oh.
Ran him out of town like a common pygmy.
Did he have any enemies?
Well, the Democrats didn't like him.
Sure, he was a physical education major, but he had a mind. He could think. He wasn't all muscle, all body, all sinewy limbs.
Police Squad was canceled after 6 episodes, and the team would repurpose the idea into the iconic Naked Gun series. Again, the Naked Gun is just so good. The joke per minute ratio this movie achieves is astounding. I've watched it several times, and it always catches me off guard how non-stop funny it is. From 89 to 94, Zaz would crank out 3 Naked Guns and then mostly bow out from the parody scene for the next decade. But while they stepped out, the Wayans brothers would step up. So Keenen Ivory Wayans came through with the instant classic I'm Gonna Get You Sucker in 1988, a movie I feel like I've been quoting since I was 10 years old. It's a send-up of 70s blaxploitation and 80s action films, all wrapped up in a hilarious package. I mean, you got Chris Rock scene stealing, talking about, can I get one rib? And one of the best gearing up gags that still gets me to this day.
Oh, Jesus. My nuts.
Keenen Ivory Wayans is holding it down for black comedy with this and In Living Color through the late 80s and early 90s, but it'd be when his little brothers Sean and Marlon Wayans came of age that they would take the parody genre by storm. First was the certified hood classic that is Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, aka the movie On and Back that, as of now, is streaming on Amazon Prime. See, in the early 90s, there was a litany of films about black inner city life, from Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, South Central, Juice. Like, that's a solid weekend marathon, goddamn. But anyway, these films were, by and large, pretty good. And to Don't Be a Menace's credit, it manages to parody them with a clear sense of affection. Don't Be a Menace has the same gag-a-minute pacing of Airplane and Naked Gun. I just think narratively, it's a little too thin and it kind of runs out of steam by the end. But even knowing that, it is one I will always pop on if it's on streaming because the jokes that hit. Don't Be a Menace really feels like a test run for the Wayans, next in arguably most iconic parody film, Scary. The mid to late 90s was a boom period for teen horror, largely driven by films such as Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Final Destination, and Urban Legend. The same way Airplane thoroughly lampooned the 70s disaster movie, the first 2 Scary movies perfectly captured the spirit of the times. Unsurprisingly, some of the gags don't hold up as well after 24 years, which can honestly be said for all the movies I talked about today, but I think the first 2 Scary movies are still pretty dang funny. If you, like me, grew up in the early 2000s, I feel like Scary Movie and the American Pie films had a certain power to them because, I know, at least at my age, you had to sneak and watch them, and you felt like you were watching something you absolutely had no business watching. Like, the first 2 Scary movies were and still are hard R. You could probably make Blazing Saddles today, but honestly the first 2 Scary movies are what people think Blazing Saddles is, because you couldn't make those movies today. They go so far beyond the bounds of political correctness and can be kinda mean-spirited, which, as a man occasionally nostalgic for those 09 COD lobbies, it takes me back to a simpler, crueler time. If you didn't grow up with the Scary Movie films, I don't know how they would play, because they're pretty up. Like, I'm not entirely against mean-spirited comedy. I think more comedy these days should have some edge to it. I just think it's easier to do sweet, well-meaning comedy than mean comedy, because if you don't do it well, you come off like an asshole. See only late-stage Dave Chappelle and Ricky Gervais. And while the first 2 Scary movies can be very mean in their humor, there's a giddy silliness driving it that doesn't feel like it's coming from like a sincerely hateful place. It's not, this is f***ed up, but it's the truth, bro. It's, look, I know this is kind of f***ed up, but like, It is kind of funny though. After the first 2 Scary Movies, the Wayans walked away due to the grueling production of Scary Movie 2. So, David Zucker would step back into the parody realm and take over directorial duties for Scary Movies 3 and 4, and the lens expanded from simply lampooning scary films to all the big blockbusters of the time. I personally like Scary Movie 3 quite a bit, though 4 was just fine. It had a few good yucks here and there, but it was very clear that it was time for the franchise to chill. Yet, that didn't stop them from making a really bad Scary Movie 5. So as we reached the mid to late 2000s, the parody baton would sadly find a home in the hands of Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer. These dudes were part of the writing team on the first Scary Movie and will leverage that fact into a series of more movies. Their first was Date Movie, which made a good chunk of money, and I honestly think just got by on Allison Hannigan's charm. Like, there's a gag or two that works, but it's generally pretty mid. In a 4-year span, they would make Epic Movie, Meet the Spartans, Disaster Movie, which seems kind of redundant as both the worst version of Airplane and somehow Epic Movie, and they would cap it off with Vampires Suck. The problem with these is that the jokes were pretty one note. In the best parodies, there's a variety of gags, from wordplay, slapstick, pop cultural references, non sequiturs, fourth wall breaks. There's just a variety of places the jokes are coming from. In the Friedberg and Seltzer verse, the jokes mainly boil down to pop cultural references followed by bodily fluids or an act of violence against said pop cultural reference. While a lot of the parodies that I mentioned earlier were R-rated, I feel like at their best, they embodied a real all-ages ethos where teenagers and adults could enjoy it equally. The Friedberg and Seltzer movies were PG-13 and mainly aimed at high schoolers and middle schoolers. And the problem is, when I was in high school, only a very specific crowd saw these movies. Cause I tell you what, me and my buds were more likely to catch the latest Apatow or Rogan movie over whatever bullshit this was. The Friedberg and Seltzer era was a real low point for the genre. The only good parody that really came from this era was Black Dynamite, a loving, incredibly accurate parody of 70s blaxploitation films. I watch this movie yearly and quote it all the time. I use "shut the fuck up" when grown folks are talking, whenever I have to deal with middle-aged children getting all hyperbolic and apoplectic about Star Wars. The parody genre would see one last gasp of life from 2013 to 2014 when Marlon Wayans would return to the genre with the Haunted House movies, and David Wayne would come through with They Came Together, the best parody film I know you haven't seen, unless you're cool, in which case, props to you. The Haunted House films carried the scary movie torch and lampooned the found footage genre, which was all the rage in the early twins. These were the epitome of movies made for audiences, not critics, because they reviewed poorly, but I saw both Haunted House films in sold-out theaters, and they tore the house down. To this day, I'm prone to making a "I don't give a fuck" Keisha reference, or entering a room and a propos of nothing asking, "Y'all talking about a Mandingo party?" On top of great one-liners and some fun set pieces, Marlon Wayans also showcases yet again that he is in the conversation as a GOAT when it comes to physical comedy. Dude gives 110% to every bit, earning the highest compliment any black audience could give him in, "Man, that boy is a fool." They Came Together, released in 2014, and in my opinion is the ultimate rom-com parody. Directed by alt comedy GOAT David Wayne, the film stars Amy Poehler and Paul Rudd as a couple telling the story of their courtship to two friends at dinner. It's only 83 minutes, it packs so many gags in its runtime, maintains a solid narrative trajectory, and it doesn't run out of steam. It is, in my opinion, one of the finest works in the genre, and it's a fucking shame that it was sent to the straight-to-DVD wasteland in 2014. It's really funny, and it's the kind of movie you tell your friends about. It's the kind of movie you get in front of a camera and implore strangers on the internet to watch. It is that good. Yet in the decades since They Came Together in the Haunted House films, there hasn't really been much in the way of parodies, either theatrically or on streaming. The most you get are random no-budget movies built to the image of Friedberg and Seltzer, less clever gags and more lazy pop cultural references. I've already gone at length about the decline of of R-rated comedy. Watch that video if you haven't. But the parodies genre's disappearance is both sad and surprising considering how much film has changed over the last decade and how much is ripe to be made fun of. I mean, shit, did superhero movie do such a good job in 2009 that folks are out here like, I don't know what we can say about the genre that superhero movie didn't already say. Like, it's the gold standard. The Deadpool movies kinda parody the superhero film, but then they also have incredibly sincere moments of superhero-dom, so it's just kinda like... There's a new scary movie in development, which I'm so on given how the franchise declined and the fact we don't have strong comedic voices right now the way we did when Zaz, the Wayans, and Mel Brooks were in the game. There are far more folks trying to make A24 flicks than trying to make fun of A24 flicks. Closing it out, the parody genre doesn't get the respect it deserves. Sure, there's no pathos, thematic depth, or meaningful insights into the human condition. Parodies pursue the gag at all costs, and I respect when that is done well. And at a time like this where everything is so divisive, we need more of that. I don't think cinema is limited to nuanced explorations of identity, faith, and societal expectations. It doesn't matter if it's high art or low art. Art is art, my nigga. And we need people with the courage to not chase being taken seriously. Because when we get down to it, that really seems to be the root driver of so many creatives. I know for me personally, I want to be taken seriously as a decisive leader with a clear vision by my collaborators, but when it comes to the art I make, I'd take audiences laughing, cheering, and quoting my shit with the homies over a solid write-up from Richard Brody or Manola Dargis. Because a majority of the movies I talked about today were not well reviewed. Even upon release, Blazing Saddles got a mixed reception. But there is a real power in making audiences lose their minds with laughter, and with how much fuckery there is to lampoon and the current industry and world at large, I would love to see the parody film come back in full force. So, that's my spiel today. I'll see you at the end of the month with the first annual Wonder Summer Movie Report Card. As always, if you got this far, give the video a like, subscribe, and please comment below what are some of your parody films. Are there some that I missed, some that you think I overpraised, some that you think I underpraised? Let me know. I'm down to check out some new parodies. I'm always looking for a good laugh. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.